where we see, hey, wait a second. Now, what was my seed that led to where I am at here now? Yes, the seed that I had in this life now, the seed that I had wasn't a particularly good seed because it led me into cockeyedness. It first led me into basically acceptance of conformity. It led me into just doing and should. It led me into inappropriate application of goodness. It led me into believing in. So my seed was very cockeyed, right?
Right.
So that's the key, is to start looking at those seed root, basic innate beliefs of being, the ones where you get down to the core, and those are the ones that need to be changed
Right.
in a
I
very
agree.
profound way. So
I
that
have been working. I know exactly what you're saying, and
right.
that's exactly what I've been doing.
Right, because this was, when we spoke in the last time, this what I'm saying now was by implication from that conversation. So it's really awesome
Right.
to follow those implications. That's really magical, because we want to be in a situation where our core fundamentals are set up in such a way that if we lose our memory, we aren't lost.
Right.
That's very key.
Right.
That's very key. And this is the key thing, so that should you come in the situation, hey, next time, if there is a next time, who knows? I don't want to go down that particular path. I want to sort out those core conceptions. And I call it soul work. We want to get our soul sorted out. Yes, our soul knows a lot, but our soul also has stuff that it needs to work on. So this is soul lessons. And the soul lesson for the soul is its core beliefs in terms of what is, for instance, just the belief in goodness, right? It's
Right.
not enough. You need to have goodness with appropriateness. In love, the soul believes in love. Oh, love is all you need. No, 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 no. You need love with awareness. So this is that sophistication of those core concepts, to understand
Right.
that we need things like discernment, we need awareness, and to know that those are the core deals, and independence of being, and the ability to be disobedient.
Right. I get all that.
Right. So, but it's to really have it, be so thoroughly into our consciousness, into our being, that we feel the importance, the necessity for the ability, for instance, to be disobedient, or to go against the grain, to not be conventional and stuff like this. So we want to make sure that we have core things that if we wake up in a new life, for instance, that we carry over this stuff of what's important to us. And that's it. Because look at the narcissism. It is a good question to start this conversation. What is important to them is a relative superiority.
Right.
Relative.
Right.
So we want to be very careful and discerning about those core beliefs, because that is, everything grows from those seeds, the seeds of self, which you could say is the soul programming. The soul doesn't have memory. It just has these core profound things that it knows and believes, so stuff that you come into the world with, as it were. Very important. Very, very important. Yeah.
Well, yes, I agree. And it is soul work. And that's what we've been doing all the time we've been
Yes.
together.
Yes.
You can call it whatever you want, but I've known from day one that's what we're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
So with that soul work, I just want to clarify. There is a perception out there that you come into this world and you have lessons to learn. So those seeds of the core of your being have been planted, and in that, experiences kind of align with the lessons that you have to learn, right?
Right.
Right so far. Okay. So then you learn them all. And then for me, I knew there was something more. And I knew that the suffering didn't need to be there, that at some level I was creating it. And I wanted to shift that, not just for me, but for my kids. And actually my kids were the piece that gave me the momentum because my self-concept was so distorted.
Wow.
So that was helpful. And so in that, when that shift happened, those memories of things that were connected to the lessons that I had to learn got blurrier and blurrier. Well, no, they didn't exist before the psychotic break. I didn't remember them at all.
They call it spiritual dissonance, rather. Sounds much.
Okay. So they didn't happen at all, and then that happened, and then they became blurry, and then they were crystal clear, and now they're like observing them. I'm observing a whole nother movie. It's somebody else's life story. It's not there's no connection to it.
Excellent.
There's no emotion. There's no connection. I look at it and I think, how in the world? But it was me, and I accept that. But I also, there's no doubt in my mind, it is no longer. So it's kind of like,
Right.
Old news.
Yeah.
So now, if I'm hearing you correctly, my takeaway from what you just said is that those core beliefs of goodness with being appropriate and loving with awareness and decision making with attunement and trusting with discernment, all of that has always been there in me. I've seen it all along, even in the old story. And it was very, very strong.
Yes, but could you articulate it?
No.
That's the key difference also. So you asked a very profound, earnest question of very deep intent. So all of you pulling from me perspective on your answer, not answers, perspective. So you asked, why do I need to go through this again? Right?
Right.
And another why is already we've said, yes, it is for self-appreciation, right? That's one why. And it is to see things with clarity rather than through the fog of memory, right? To see it with that discernment, the detached discernment, overview perspective. Many good reasons, plus soul lessons. And also, it is to get to this point where, yes, you understand, you knew, you did know stuff then, but the ability to articulate it, to master it, to have a full understanding is something else. We understand and know a lot, but we can't express it. Because yes, we sort of kind of know, but when we are able to express it, and not just express it, but articulate it, express it fluently, in other words, right? That is when we have mastery over it. And that is when we come to own it. Understanding doesn't necessarily mean owning it. To get it to be into the soul, to own it, we need to have mastery over it.
But I don't know that the mastery and the owning it has to be that you have to relive it necessarily. Well, maybe you do. Wait. I think I know why you do. Because for me, when I look back, and because it's so different than who I am now, and it's like watching somebody else's movie, you can detach from the significance of it. And it needs to be significant enough for me to be able to own it. I have to be like, that was me, not that was somebody else that I'm watching. Making those cockamamie decisions and stuff.
Exactly.
Okay.
And
that
also,
makes sense.
you're not so overwhelmed that you retreat emotionally.
Oh yeah, that's true too. See? It was pretty overwhelming going through this in the beginning.
Exactly. So you didn't get all the fullness, and then you retreated into a little corner of yourself in your soul, and you disconnect because it's too unpleasant. So we need to also, one of the things, I hope you're making notes of this. Well, to because there's a lot of stuff here to in terms of your question. There's
I'll listen back and I'll take notes. This is too big. I'm like really just being a sponge right now and absorbing.
Right. So one of the other things in terms of this reviewing and looking at things from a perspective, an overview perspective, it is to that mastery, that owning it fully. It is also to be able to I lost the thought that I had. um, to be able to connect to it from a point and a perspective that allows us to actually utilize it and to specifically see that, hey, what is in the past, what were unpleasant experiences, do not have to be so in the future. In other words, it is not the experience that determines whether it is pleasant or not. It is us, and this is
Right. It's the
profound
meaning
shift.
that we kind of assign to the situation and how we handle it in that moment.
Our attitudes, our mindsets, our beliefs, our perspectives, our way of being, our impeccability, our discernment, all of this is what determines the emotionality. In other words, the most profound lesson for me in you getting to relive these things is for you to say, hey, from now that I look at it from the outside, I realize I do not have to feel the way I did then. I did not have to feel that way. We have these innate core beliefs that, oh, if something like if somebody dies, you have to feel sad. No, that's not actually true. You don't have to. There's not a things happen, you have to feel this way. There's not a direct relationship. That's a complete, profound misbelief. And when we unhook from that, this is a major step to our freedom. In other words, the root thing that the universe is trying to tell you is your emotional reaction to any situation is always a choice. Always.
Right.
It's one of the lessons of narcissists, that their emotional reactions are not the usual reactions to things. They can see something horrible happen and say, oh, good, because they get some benefit in it for them. So not that we need to
Well,
do
it's sort of the same kind of thing, but
right.
in a different way.
Right. We need to learn from them because, like everything, it's not cut and dried. It's not black and white. So that's the other thing to unhook from. One of the profound things for Donna is to unhook from black-white mindset. To see that when you look at this stuff now, it's not so either or, right?
Right.
You
That
can
is
see,
correct.
wow, you know what? There were these gifts. I could have enjoyed myself, even though I was with a narcissist. I could have had fun with a narcissist. I could have laughed my ass off at their foolish nonsense, for instance. Just there's different ways of being. And this is the most profound thing to unhook from our beliefs of how we should respond and what's the appropriate response. There isn't any hard and fast. There's a whole range of stuff that could be appropriate. And in some instances, we completely and utterly get to choose our response. Appropriateness isn't always externally determined. And it's like you said earlier too, he said, where do these thoughts come from? Why do they have to come from somewhere? Why can't you just create them?
Well, that doesn't.
They could come from somewhere, and you could also just be stuff that you created because of you got stuff stewing in your pot. Where do those smells come from? They come from the stuff stewing in the pot, right? They don't necessarily come from elsewhere. So, yeah, sometimes smells come from elsewhere. But if you chuck a whole lot of stuff in your pot and you mix it together and you start cooking it up, well, hey, you're going to smell stuff. So, a lot of our stuff comes from ourselves, from the mixture and things moving around and interacting within ourselves. So we tend to always have this idea. Again, it's one of those hard and fast things. Where do these thoughts come from? Like they have to come from somewhere else. But who thought it originally? Somebody had to think it up. You see what I mean? So,
oh, yeah.
well, so you can be that original thing with your things too. In other words, we can reinvent the wheel. Very much so. We just sometimes stuff comes from elsewhere, yes, but not always. And they can just come from ourselves. So, yeah.
Maybe.
I'm just saying, it's not. I'm not saying they all come from us. We don't create all of it. They do come from elsewhere, but not all of it comes from elsewhere either, right?
Well, I want to know where they come from.
Well, some of it comes from you, Donna.
No. I
Some of
suppose.
it. Some of it. Not all of it. Some of it comes from you. I'm not saying that don't, that it doesn't come from elsewhere. It does come from elsewhere, some of it too, but not all of it. I'm just looking to say that to break from this idea that all of it comes from elsewhere.
Well, I
That's
never really felt like all of it did.
right. I don't know, but it's by implication in what you say, and
Oh
this,
no.
yeah, yeah. So when again, it's something to be aware of, to be cautious of things that by implication on what we say, because in the same way as I'm listening to you, you have inner aspects that are listening to you,
Mm.
and they tend to go by that implication. So those implications program the bureaucrats. So we have to be very careful of our language as well. So again, you being able to see yourself, it gives you the opportunity to write your story with a very preciseness of discernment and overview perspective. That's very powerful, Donna.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very powerful. So yeah, self-expression is very powerful because it's a feedback loop. What we say, what we think goes back inside ourselves. And again, to understand the complexity of ourselves, that we aren't just the single entity. We have aspects that are sub-aspects of ourselves, and that, like the inner bureaucrats, and then they also listen to us, so we have this mindless computer inside there. I just call it the inner bureaucrats, but it's pretty mindless, really. So it's very important to be very precise. In other words, in everything that we do, in the sense of the preciseness of power. Yeah.
Yep.
So you're getting a real massive, fantastic opportunity. So that's the other part of this thing, is to shift that perspective so profoundly. You said, why do I need this stuff? To shift it to so profoundly that you can see them as not onuses on you, but as gifts. Isn't that huge, Donna?
Yep.
I mean, when we can see, things like this as profound magical gifts, capital G gifts, that's a big shift in our lives, isn't it?
It is. And you say that, and I will say that if somebody was starting the program and you said that they were gifts, they'd get ticked off
Right.
because it creates that feeling. Well, for me, it
Right.
created a feeling inside my gut that I equated to anxiety and pain, literally pain in my heart.
Yeah.
And in thinking that I had that kind of energy and I made those kind of choices and I behaved that way. So it's like you had to look at it and initially, and I'm not there now, I'm not in that space, but initially it was like, holy shit,
Right.
that narcissist is me. That's hard. That's a
Right. Right.
that's a like, oh my
Right.
word.
Right.
And so
Eh,
then when they come up later, you're like, oh man, I got to look at it again. Oh,
right. But
okay.
now, Donna, when you look at that, the pain came from an
Yeah,
identification with the confusion between behavior and between real self, between
right.
behavior and intent. You
Well,
had the
back then
behavior.
you felt like that was your real self. That's what you, there
Exactly.
was an identity connection
Right.
between it.
But
Now
also,
there's not, but I still am like, man, okay. My
right.
initial reaction was, yeah,
Right. But also back then, even there was a disassociation to some extent, which also caused lots of stress and trauma and trouble. The disassociation between your intent of goodness and your behavior.
oh
Even
yes,
back
for
then,
sure.
there was an awareness that your behavior was causing you problems, that you didn't like your own behavior, even back then. Right.
Oh yeah,
So to understand
absolutely.
that, right, and this is a profound understanding. And one of the things when you look at your daughter and that other woman and you say, am I my behavior? Was I my behavior? No, I
Right.
am not my behavior. I was
Absolutely
not my
not.
behavior. And that is a huge step, because all that identity that caused you anguish at the start of the program. That was the identity with behavior as self.
Right. Correct.
So how profound is this, that you're saying this like, well, duh, now. But when we started, that wasn't a duh.
Well, that's why I'm saying it.
Yeah. No,
That's
it's
exactly
huge.
right.
Yeah, I'm just emphasizing it. Yeah, just reiterating,
I
because
know
it's
you do
so
that,
profound.
and then I want you to know that I don't know. There's just this feeling of, if I say it to you, the another person that's starting out, just to like when they're going through. I know you already know all this, but there's just this sense of
Oh,
me that
I love it. I love it when you say.
like sharing it so that other people, when they're starting out in the program, like you can know, because where I am now, I could see that if I were to look at people that were starting out, I think I would have a hard time necessarily uh I allowing the appropriate level of compassion
Tell you
to.
what. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead, to shine through, kind of.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, Donna, with people starting new in the program, when they come now, if you, for me, what I very much would like to see happen is for you to be a part of their starting, so that you can exactly give them these warnings and perspectives. And Bina also.
Yeah, I'm not sure that
That to me is part of how the program works, that as we move through, those that are moving through it, they share their experiences with those coming in new.
right. Well, I do that on a daily basis in my
Right.
everyday walking world. I mean, it's amazing how often, and just even like with the conversation with my daughter yesterday, my, uh, she had this same scenario that came up, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago. And I remember our conversation. I was sitting there in the chair thinking back, dang, this is deja vu, child. We had the same conversation. And it was totally different. And I was coming up from it from a totally different perspective. And this time I didn't really say much, didn't feel like I had to, didn't feel like it was my place. I just wanted to give her space, and I just wanted to listen. And then all I just said was that, as far as exactly what you had said, learning does not have to come through the suffering side of this.
Yeah.
Shift it to see what good came out of it, because there's learning in everything. And don't allow anyone or any circumstance to take away your inner joy and your inner peace.
Right.
Just that's all. That's all I said. And it was that profound desire to now shift. I have learned my lessons. Yes, there's going to be more, but it's exactly what you had said, and that's what I'm focusing on. Staying joyful and peaceful in my heart, no matter the external circumstances, no matter what's going on, who I'm doing it with, none of that matters. What matters is how I feel about myself and within myself, and knowing who I am and being able to use that power in an appropriate manner and knowing what to do. That's it.
Right. And what matters to the universe is awareness. It doesn't care really if you're going to suffer or you're going to have fun getting your awareness. That's up to you. The key is that you get to the awareness. And what matters to your soul is the same thing. Our soul is kind of ruthless. It's saying, well, you know what? We've got an eternity going on here. If you suffer a little bit, for a few seconds in terms of the eternity, well, too bad.
Yeah, that's for sure.
But when we realize that we don't need to, it's about the awareness. So when awareness becomes important to us, when awareness becomes the most important stuff, now we come into these situations with, this is an opportunity for me to exercise awareness, to practice my discernment, to practice my emotional independence of being, to practice my solidity of self, to practice my impeccability, my earnestness, my integrity, all of this stuff. Wow. Oh, now suddenly, well, where's the time and the space for suffering? None at all, because you're so focused on awareness and the development and enhancement and growth of awareness. You're so excited about that there's no time for suffering and stress and bother in that. This is a key shift in the soul. In the soul's tenth of what is important to the soul. Our soul has a legacy of, millennia of DNA hierarchy, legacy, whatever, of the stuff that's important in life as family and children and work and shit like this. No, it's awareness that's important. Very big shift. Very, very big shift in terms of when we wake up in as a child, as a baby. Awareness is to be the thing that's important. Nothing else. That's it. Awareness.
I think it's though, like for me, for example, what's important is my family. It is important. My family is important, but like we had talked about, it's utilizing your awareness in those situations with your family and
Right.
how those can be integrated.
Right.
And without the awareness, the family situation can be anything, and it's not going to be what your soul wants it to be. You have to
Exactly.
have that element of an awareness in those family
Right.
interactions. And yesterday with my daughter, it was just so evidently clear to me in how I felt and my reaction with her. There is such a huge shift. I'm nothing like I used to be. And for her, there's going to be that ripple effect, because if I'm aware and I'm sharing that awareness from a soul level, that's going to connect to her soul level, and it's going to like do a ding dong wake up call for her too. There's no doubt in my mind. I saw that yesterday with her. Her mood shifted. She was able to cope better. It was like, yeah, you're right. It's the end of the world. There is a good lesson. I mean, it was just so evident.
That's so magical to hear. That's so magical to hear. Donna, let's just assume, for argument's sake, we don't know how the greater system works exactly, but let's just assume that we live multiple lives, right? And there's a good sense to it, because the universe is saying it's all about awareness. But what it wants is to have us be in a situation where we can figure out the starting seed that gets us to awareness in the most efficient, effective, and sensible way. Because now the universe can say, if we can figure out this seed, we can shift the paradigms of being, and we can plant these seeds all over the show, and now, the whole world and everything changes. All right? That's for argument's sake. So, in other words, taking the same idea conception, we're saying, okay, we live multiple lives and we start all over again, and we kind of grow the seed and we see how it works out. And okay, we keep fine tuning the seed and we start again. And in this process, we keep fine tuning that seed. Now, so in other words, we've had, zillions of lives. In all of those lives, how many families have you had? Zillions.
Zillions, right?
Exactly. So my point is that, yes, a family is important now, but when we look at it from that bigger overview perspective, yes, it's all family. Everyone is family. You are your own family. Awareness. And then again, we said, hey, in order to really appropriately have family, we need awareness. So awareness is the thing that is more important, because without awareness, you can't have family. Yeah.
Oh, I agree totally.
Right. No, I'm just restating it in words, just to kind of condense it. And
Are we doing that dance again?
yeah,
You're sharing the obvious, and I'm saying, yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah. I reshare the obvious. It's a takeaway.
I
Just
know,
just to
I know.
reformulate it and come at it and put it in perspective, so that we tie it up, because otherwise we sort of know, but we need to have it where we can own the knowing. And for me, that's what I'm doing. I'm owning my knowing, and I'm building
Right,
it in and incorporating it in, and
right.
just putting it in that formulation that allows
Okay,
us to
so
apply.
define for a person that starts the program, what is awareness, and then define for a person that is longer, from a soul perspective, has reached an understanding of who they really are. Would your definition of awareness shift and how you would articulate it to those two different individuals?
Wow, that's a really excellent question. Okay, so let's start with like a newbie awareness, or like
Yeah, remember
child.
my very
Yeah,
first
yeah,
question.
yeah,
What is awareness? Exactly. I
yeah,
said, what exactly is awareness?
yeah, yeah. Uh, hmm. I would say awareness is the ability to know more than what your senses tell you.
Okay, good. I got that. And from a soul perspective,
Awareness is communion with more.
right?
I'm
It's
trying to give
literally the
very,
union,
very one sentence, definitions here. Obviously, there's
right?
more,
And
but
I would say the exact same thing. My word was union, and yours was communion.
yeah.
So interesting.
And your word was union?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And yours was communion.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. Because union implies a loss of self, maybe. Whereas communion implies that there is a merging, but also a maintenance of self. It's the two together.
Yeah. I don't feel like there's a loss of self, but I like your word better.
Right. Right. Just
Something
like,
that's already there, and you're just recognizing it and owning it and bringing it forward so there can be a union.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's just implications. And communion also implies communication of some sort, interactivity. So,
So say the two again.
oh gosh, uh, awareness
Uh,
from a starting point of view, it's the
mhm.
ability to know more than what your senses tell you, to know more than what you can just see and hear and feel, in other words, right?
Right. Okay.
So in other words, it's perspective. But I didn't want to use the word perspective
No,
because
I like the senses. As a newbie, I can relate to
exactly,
that. I
exactly.
can put
Because
my
the
hands
newbie,
around that.
I'm thinking of a child. If you say, "Oh,
Right.
awareness is the ability to know more than you can see," wow, oh, this is a magic power. In other words, exactly,
Right.
it's a magic power. And if I said, "Well, it's the ability to shift perspective," what the hell is perspective? It's a
Exactly.
loop, right? So
Right.
that's why I didn't use the word. But now that we are bridging the two, to say, okay, now we go from that ability. In other words, what we said there, and the fancy word later on when the child's, well, that's perspective shifting. That's having overview perspective. That's awareness, seeing things in a bigger context, seeing more than what you can perceive with your senses. So, all right. So then we go to the end point of awareness, which is communion with the more.
Hmm.
And that's it, that interactivity, that connectivity to the more, that immersion in the more, that being the more, having the more in us, to say the universe isn't out there, but the universe is also in here. It's both out there and in here. That's communion. And yet we still retain some sense of individuality. And awareness in the end point is also power.
Right.
Awareness is ultimate survival.
Now, what came up in me? Oh, when you said power, a narcissist kind of has power, but it's distorted.
It's power without awareness. Exactly.
So when you said it has power, it's appropriate power came into my
Awareness
mind.
is power.
Appropriate power.
Right. But I said it not has power. I said awareness is power.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Different. Different.
Yeah, I see
Very
what you're
different.
saying. Very different.
Awareness is
Is
power.
power.
Right.
Right.
That's what makes the narcissist's so-called power and not a power, because there's no awareness with it. It's immersion into a bubble, and it's a distortion. So the more awareness, the less we distorted we are, the less we get caught up in the bubbles, and thus the more in communion with the overall we are. Now, we might not have the ability now in this particular configuration to have universal awareness. Our actual ability as a human being in this configuration, our awareness can only go so far. But at least we can get to have enough awareness to be in attunement, to say the parts of the universe that I can be aware of, I can see enough to allow me to be in attunement. The same thing, I don't have to see all of the river to be in attunement with the river,
Right.
right? I only
I
need to
think,
be in attunement with
yeah.
the part of the river that I'm on, and that's enough. But I do need to be in attunement with the river. Very important. So attunement is the key to that communion. It is the key to connecting our limited awareness with universal awareness. It's that the communion link is through attunement. Now, attunement doesn't necessarily mean that we have to be aware of the entirety of universal awareness. No, we just need to be aware enough to be aware of the link, which is attunement. Yeah.
So here's the newbie. They're going to say in that scenario, so you have attunement to source, your whatever you want to call it, right? That greater perspective, that
Uh-huh.
larger perspective. Okay. And then now you do have awareness that is within you. So how do you connect? Tell me specifically how I do that.
By
How
paying
do
attention.
I connect to attunement at
Right.
all the time? Is
Right.
that possible?
Yes, because by paying attention to the intent of the world around you, by paying,
Defined intent.
I will in a second, by paying attention to the energy flows around you, by paying attention to rhythm, by paying attention to the pressures of the world around you. And when you say to define intent, intent is uh, applied energy that has a purpose. So when we look at the world and the life around us, and we start to say, oh, let me just look at everything around me, at the wind, the trees, the sky, people, work, politics, society, entertainment, everything. And I start to say, how does this press on me? How does it connect to me? How does my connectivity to it make my life either easier, more appropriate, or not? More fluid? How does it enhance my awareness or not? When I see those things in the context of awareness and how I can connect or disconnect in order to enhance my awareness, in order to facilitate my energy, in order to utilize my energy in the most appropriate manner, which is what impeccability is. This is what attunement is. It is all about energy management. The more attuned, the more efficiently and effectively we are utilizing our energy.
Okay,
The
so
more
my
attuned I am to
takeaway,
the more attuned I am to the river, the less I have to paddle. Yeah.
yeah, I need to make that into my simplistic. That's pretty high level. So if I were to get up in the morning, I would say my takeaway from that is in my awareness, I wake up and I greet the world and the universe because I am that.
Yes.
Okay, so you start there. Then you say, okay, I have to go to work. That's a choice I've made. And for right now, there's benefit in that being a function of my life. So the amount of energy that I put into that job, for an example, I can through the day feel through just daily interactions the appropriate amount of energy to put
There you
into it.
go.
For example, I used to work all the time because my sense of identity was connected to my job. I am totally aware that I have moved beyond that. And so in that one perspective shift is huge. I am not the job. I'm there to do a job. And the amount of energy, that's a choice. And that's intent. The appropriate flow of energy that I give to that job. And like we've talked about before, it allows me to continue in my growth and my learning. Whereas, let's say I had a factory job and I had to use my hands every second and I didn't have a computer to look things up and I wasn't able to chat every once in a while with you or Bina, right? So for me, that's extremely important. So I'm making a
Yes.
choice.
Yes.
And let's say that sometimes I have friends that want to do something and the friends tend to be kind of negative and critical. And I am in a space where I look at that situation and I say, at this moment in time, and this is where I feel kind of selfish, but there are times where I don't want to extend the energy into that situation and I choose otherwise.
Important. Energy management, very important.
I know. And I'm learning that it's okay to be selfish, that I have to take care of myself first. And that's the only piece that I feel at this point I'm really focusing on, because I have had in the past, when it came to energy management, I used to give and put everybody else first. And then I had nothing left for me.
There
And
you go.
you can't do that in energy management. You can't
No.
stay aware.
Exactly.
You disconnect from your own self and your own awareness. So
Right.
am I taking away what you were communicating?
Oh, absolutely. Just one thing you had to do is just connect energy management and impeccability as the same thing. Impeccability, by definition, is the best use of energy. That's what impeccability is.
Right.
That's it. Very simple. So you asked for a very simple definition of attunement. That's what we are now, right? And that is
Right.
attunement is. Attunement is the extension of impeccability outside of the bubble of yourself. It is when we apply impeccability to our connection to the universe. That's what attunement is. Same thing. It's still impeccability. It's still energy management, still best use of energy, right?
Right.
That's it. Attunement is also best use of energy the same way as impeccability is. It's the same thing, just applied in a different context. When we look at impeccability, we tend to think of it just as ourself. Attunement is simply universal. Impeccability applied in connection, in relation to the universe and our connection with it. That's all. So how can we best use our energy to be in the flow of things, in the grand scheme, in the grand orchestration, the grand engine, the grand mechanism of the universe? How can we best use our energy and have it be related to that, so that our energy is not fighting the universe, for instance? It's not.
Right. And that's the piece that I don't feel that I'm always there.
Right. And that is when we start to see and insist that it makes sense. This is attunement, because when we see how it makes sense, now, I get it. And we stop fighting, and now we enjoy. And now it becomes magic rather than stress. That insisting that things make sense and then seeing how it makes sense. So really what we are insisting on is insisting on how things make sense. We can just wrap that all up into one sentence. Insist on seeing how things make sense. They all make sense in some way or another. And they all make sense in the context of awareness. That's how it all makes sense. It's all about awareness. The point and purpose of life, the universe, and everything is awareness. That's the meaning of life. Right there. Very simple.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense of everything, Donna?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Then our best use of energy comes to say, no matter what happens, I can get awareness out of it. That's it. Very simple.
If you get awareness out of it, that's where the joy comes.
Exactly. Because that's the most important thing. And we realize that when we are fully in attunement to the universe, our purpose and the universe's purpose, one and the same thing, which is
Right.
awareness. Very simple.
I have no desire to fight with the universe.
Right.
It's always been my
Exactly.
earnest desire to
be in attunement.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And that's really magical when we realize that. And then we realize that, look, we have a deep innate need to survive. Or pressure, one could say. Right?
Right.
That's innate. What is the best mechanism for ensuring survival? Not power, not strength, not dominance, not wealth. No, it is awareness. See? So now when we say that looking to survive, awareness is the optimal mechanism for ensuring survival. Changes everything. It all makes sense now, right? Not only that, what's the point of surviving in misery? None whatsoever.
Exactly.
So we
Yeah.
need to, so even greater than survival is the need to survive with joy, or just to be joyful, to have joy. Now I use joy as a overall umbrella term for all of the superlative ways of being,
Right.
bliss, elation,
Same
rapture.
here. Me
Right.
too.
Okay.
Me
So
too.
so this is awareness, is what allows us to be joyful in any situation. How
Mhm.
powerful is that?
It is very powerful. Yeah. And especially when you're in situations where you recognize, wow,
Right.
you know, this could have been perceived totally different, and I didn't even have to go through a process to shift it. It's already there.
Right.
And the
Now,
more that happens, the more you're like, cool.
right. So, in the same way as survival is a deep innate need, so is goodness. Not just goodness for you, but goodness for everybody. Now, we want goodness for everybody, but we aren't able to implement it because, well, we aren't the universe or a God, right? So the
Right.
only way we can do that is to be an appropriate cog in the entire mechanism, right?
Right.
So to be an appropriate cog, doesn't this necessitate the ability to be joyful within your circumstances, no matter what they are? Because whatever circumstances you went through, how do you know that that isn't the gear and the cog of the universe? We don't. So sometimes, okay, we have to say, whatever the circumstances are, I can change them or not. But wherever I find myself, I'm being a cog in the big mechanism in some way or another. So therefore, my task is to be the most appropriate and joyful cog that I could possibly be, and to know that I'm being a cog, and to enjoy being a cog.
Mhm. Right. I've had these same thoughts. I guess you can read minds. And also, it was interesting because you know how we talk about anomalies? There was this big discussion at this place that I volunteer that you know
Uh-huh.
about the show Survivor. And anytime that people have a conversation that's universal and it's a message that I have an opportunity to have a takeaway from, I
Right.
get this I get this butterfly thing in my stomach, and I get butterflies in my stomach a lot. So that
I
theme
think.
of survivor came up in conversation the last, I don't know, week, probably half a dozen times. And then you just said it and it just all connected. Oh, that's the shift I'm doing. And it was very intentional. It was a very intentional shift from pain and the whole quote unquote victim and survival to joy and choice and attunement. And that's been my intent, to make that shift and fully immerse in that. So it's
Wow.
not just sometimes.
Right. Right. Now, part of the profound shifting of our way of being, of our understanding, of our root core beliefs, are to shift paradigm beliefs.
Right.
And that show Survivor, it is an example of a societal, somewhat, paradigm belief which needs to shift.
Right.
And that is that survival is something that is competitive. It's
Right.
Survival is cooperative. That show is utter bullshit because it entrenches this idea that survival is competitive, dog eat dog,
Exactly.
and it's
Right.
completely wrong. Our survival actually is dependent on not having that. What has made us survive is when we've collaborated, not competed.
Exactly.
Competition is what has been detrimental to our survival. War is profound competition. It's the ultimate
Right.
competition. Whenever we build a city, build a factory, any medicine, science, art, the art, all this is collaboration. So this is a profound shift that we need to have. Our inner root seed, our soul lesson is to understand the primacy and necessity for collaboration as
Exactly.
mechanism for awareness enhancement and just for magic and for everything awesome. So this is a major paradigm shift that we
Well,
need.
even like football or shows like The Bachelor,
Right, right.
they allow for some significant perspective shifting
Oh
because
yeah,
they're
oh yeah,
dense.
all of it, all of it. Everything can be used for awareness. Football is actually, even though most people say, yeah, but that's a good example of competition. Not really. Only real competition that you truly have is war. Everything else is collaboration to some extent because they agreed to play by rules. That's collaboration right there, right?
And that's true.
Right. So when you see that, well, they're actually agreeing to compete. That's collaboration. The only time you don't agree really is when there's no rules. That's in true war, when ruleless war. So, which is chaos and havoc, and everybody loses. It's just foolishness. So
Everyone loses.
right.
I
So,
missed my yoga class, darn it.
oh, but this was good yoga too, and this is mental yoga, wasn't it? Spiritual yoga, psychological
Spiritual yoga.
yoga.
Soul yoga.
So there you go. I like that soul yoga. And I do like this, Donna. When new people come in, you to say, okay, Donna is here very specifically for the purpose of providing you with perspective of what you need to know when you come in new. I'll leverage that. I'll leverage that. It's very powerful for you, and it's very important for you, Donna, and it's a big deal. It's a very big deal, you know. And
Well, I do it all the time, so it doesn't really, that's what we're here to do. It's not me, Donna, doing it. It's me opening up to who I really am and
I,
being able to provide that in situations. That's application of the whole way of impeccability. And I do it every day, all the
and
time. Some to strangers, some to family, all kinds of
I love it.
situations.
I love it. I love it. It's you being in attunement with deep you, with your innate intent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the
Yep.
pressures of motivation. Yeah. Motivation is a rare gift. And, when that comes, when I feel motivated to utilize that energy appropriately, it's very important.
That momentum
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
appropriately. That's the
Yeah.
whole key.
Yeah. That's why appropriateness is the one word, the one constant
Right?
that binds them all. It really is something, It really is
Just
something. It
get
really.
out of my own way and I'm good. Well, I do need to scoot though. I've
Okay.
got some
Okay.
things and I've got some processing to do, but that was really good.
Brilliant. I love it. I love it. I love it. It's always good chatting to you, Donna. Always, 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 always. I just love it. So also articulation particularly is important to focus on as a task. Expression, articulation, elucidation, the ability to really master and own what you know. Because that way we get to that different level of awareness. It sits inside us differently. We can know stuff, but if we can't express it, it doesn't quite sit in the fullness of us. When we can truly explain it, then we own it. Yeah. And it
Yep.
becomes
Very
us.
true.
It becomes
All
us.
right.
But that's what I was hoping for, just so that you can say hello
Hello.
and goodbye.
Hello and
Huh?
goodbye.
Huh? What?
And
Hello,
Donna's just
Vina.
just going here now. So
Oh my God. Come on. Really?
I gotta go. Darn
Oh
it.
God. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm late because I was not at home, and then I came, but haven't eat anything. So just go to eat, and then
all good, all
also
good,
make
all
some
good.
tea.
Donna and I were involved in a very, very powerful, magical chat. So it was really magical. Donna was just like really on fire. So
Oh, Donna. Oh God. And today, my morning, I was sleeping.
good,
I was sleeping
good.
till 8, and I was like, really? Where all my time went?
Wow, 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 wow. All good, all good. See, everything works out. Everything works out. So,
Yeah.
all right. Well, maybe we connect later. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see.
Okay.
If you guys
Okay.
connect later, just like you did this morning, and if I can, I'll join you.
Okay.
Oh, please, please, if you can, please do.
Yes. Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Brilliant.
Bye,
Okay,
Dina.
Donna.
Bye,
Bye-bye,
Sel.
Donna.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, Brina, let me just
Yeah.
end the meeting and start another one so that I have the recording.
Okay.
So
Okay. Okay.
I'll
Okay.
just, I'm just going to end and come right back. All right.
Okay.